Watch this. The man who became a god in another world has returned to modern times as a YouTuber? Takafumi's uncle, Yusuke, was hospitalized from a car accident years ago. After being in a coma for 17 years, he suddenly woke up in autumn. When Takafumi visited him, he found Yusuke acting as if he were mad, claiming he had spent 17 years in another world and had somewhat forgotten how to speak Japanese. Besides Takafumi, other relatives who came to visit started arguing about Yusuke's future care, ultimately cutting ties and vowing never to see each other again. Even Takafumi's mother, Yusuke's sister, declared she never wanted to see him again. Yusuke silently erased these memories. He then prepared to show Takafumi his magic. Takafumi initially wanted to explain that he couldn't take care of Yusuke due to economic difficulties and his own job commitments. He even intended to have Yusuke sign a severance contract. But when Yusuke levitated a water bottle using wind magic, Takafumi, intrigued by the idea of otherworldly adventures, tore up the contract. However, Yusuke, freshly back in the modern world, was very concerned about the fate of the Sega consoles he remembered. Takafumi informed him that Sega had long exited the console market, now dominated by Nintendo and Sony. Shocked, Yusuke erased his memory of the event and handed Takafumi a notebook detailing his tragic experiences in the other world. Reading it, Takafumi was also deeply affected and erased his memory of the notebook with Yusuke's help. After Yusuke was discharged, Takafumi took him home and decided to collaborate with him as a YouTuber. Videos of Yusuke performing magic, mistaken for special effects, earned them 60,000 yen. Takafumi knew there was something real in those short videos. Yusuke moved into the house Takafumi rented after his previous roommate had issues, a concept that didn't exist 17 years ago. Seeing Takafumi's smartphone, Yusuke marveled at how quickly technology had advanced. Curious about Yusuke's companions in the other world, Takafumi was told that Yusuke had been fighting alone for 17 years. It was such a heavy topic that Takafumi felt awkward asking more. While washing dishes, Yusuke shared that people in the other world were all very attractive, and he felt ugly in comparison, almost getting killed on arrival as a beast-like creature. This revelation made Takafumi tremble with the weight of the conversation. It wasn't the best time to discuss such matters. Yusuke also mentioned a persistent individual in the other world who constantly belittled and insulted him, even after Yusuke had saved him from a monster. The person never thanked him, instead saying, "I didn't ask you to save me. Don't touch me. And I only don't vomit when I see your face." Frustrated, Yusuke eventually left that person behind in a small town. At that moment, Takafumi pictured the face of a tsundere elf girl. Tsundere only became popular after 2004, 4 years after Yusuke had traveled to the other world. This means Yusuke didn't understand the concept of tsundere at all. He felt that modern society, with its internet and computers, was much more enjoyable, even though he couldn't help feeling annoyed by comments online. It seems that, otherworldly adventures or not, keyboard warriors can still get to anyone. Yusuke found the technological progress in modern society overwhelming. He mentioned his own innovations in the other world, like a jar that continuously produced water. He thought explaining it would be too complicated, so he simply showed Takafumi the images from his mind of the infinite water jar he had created. He had hoped it would revolutionize that world, but it nearly got him hanged by the villagers, who destroyed the jar, believing Yusuke had violated their beliefs. Just then, Elgar, an elf he had saved before, appeared. Yusuke managed to untie himself and escape. Takafumi slammed the table as Yusuke shifted the view to get a closer look at Elgar. Despite her critical words, she was relieved he escaped. Takafumi was stunned. "She's a super beauty?" But Yusuke didn't care. He was distracted by a flip phone he wanted to bid on at an auction. He clicked to place a bid, forgetting to check the shipping cost, which turned out to be more expensive than the phone itself. Takafumi sighed, wishing for a face-to-face transaction to avoid shipping fees. Unexpectedly, Yusuke jumped out the window. Takafumi hurried after him, only to find Yusuke had used flying magic to confront the seller and returned minutes later with the phone. Takafumi then opened his computer, selected several cheap second-hand furniture items, and with Yusuke's help, got them shipped for free. Later, Takafumi bought discounted rice from Amazon. He asked Yusuke for scissors to open the box, but Yusuke pulled out a dragon-slaying sword instead. It turned out Yusuke had brought many items from the other world, including a mermaid ring that could have bought a castle there but was now worth only 50 yen because no one recognized the material. Curious, Takafumi wondered if that meant Yusuke had someone to give the ring to in the other world. His curiosity piqued, but Yusuke said it was just a reward for clearing a maze. Sensing Takafumi wanted to talk about romance, Yusuke mentioned his first love was a video game console he saw in elementary school. Takafumi joked about not having a human love interest. Yusuke mentioned there was a girl, but she was killed by a villain and, under enemy control, attacked him. Takafumi realized, isn't that the plot of a Sega game? He asked Yusuke if he hadn't met any girls in the other world. Yusuke showed him a scene where he defeated orcs and saved 3 siblings. However, upon seeing Yusuke, the brothers immediately stood in front of their sister, who tearfully took Yusuke's hand. Takafumi observed, it looks like the sister was ready to sacrifice herself to protect her brothers. Yusuke said he later felt like he was attacked by goblins and fell off a cliff, never seeing the girl again. The girl's 2 younger brothers had a fierce look in their eyes as they moved behind to avoid letting Yusuke see the cruel reality. Takafumi changed the subject, but Yusuke mentioned that after falling off a cliff, Elgar had saved him. At that time, Elgar haughtily stated that Yusuke owed her a life and must repay her forever. Unexpectedly, Yusuke immediately pulled out a ring, one of only 7 in the world, intending to use it as repayment. Although Elgar was tsundere, she did not refuse. Takafumi was shocked by the scene, feeling like Yusuke had done something drastic. He asked Yusuke if he was ready to take responsibility. Yusuke assured him he was and had already sold the ring in the next town for money and paid compensation to Elgar, then ditched her in the same town. However, Elgar still persisted in following him. Takafumi was somewhat impressed by Elgar's determination. Recently, the videos they made together had low viewership. Yusuke brought a magazine he had wanted to see before going to the other world, featuring rankings of Sega and other games. The desire to read this magazine had helped him survive in the other world. Takafumi teased, all this for something so trivial? Upon seeing the final rankings, which included a console port of a dating sim, Yusuke felt like even tough guys can't resist love. He claimed not to care, but was actually so angry he could disperse clouds. The two then discussed role-playing games. Yusuke said he had encountered similar plots in the other world and showed Takafumi a mental image. When Yusuke first arrived in the village in the other world, he was nearly expelled by the village chief and villagers. After a beating, the chief relented and told Yusuke that a magic dragon had revived to the west, likely to destroy the village. Only the village's hereditary ice tribe's sacred sword could defeat it. The heir, Mabel, missed the flowers her mother showed her as a child. Yusuke turned to leave, and Takafumi thought he was going to pick flowers. Instead, Yusuke, being very powerful, just killed the magic dragon. Takafumi joked about picking flowers, but Yusuke admitted he couldn't remember such a long name. The chief glanced at the heir, then at Yusuke, and finally accepted the reality of the dragon's death. Meanwhile, Takafumi received a delivery. To compensate for missing Yusuke's birthday, he had bought Yusuke's favorite old Sega console, complete with his favorite games. Yusuke seemed very happy. That evening they went out shopping, and Yusuke talked about the New Year's Eve in the other world. Takafumi was very interested, but Yusuke thought he was just interested in games. On the way back, Yusuke pulled out a comic book. Takafumi worried if Yusuke could still understand it after 17 years. Yusuke said Kochikame could be understood any time. Takafumi noted that the comic had ended, which Yusuke couldn't believe. Then he showed Takafumi a video of New Year's Eve in the other world. The scene was lively. The local lord invited the villagers for a meal to celebrate, and everyone was happy. But while others celebrated, Yusuke sat at a table alone, leaving early after his meal. The tsundere Elgar didn't appear that day. Takafumi felt a bit sympathetic towards Yusuke and joined him in playing video games. During the game, Yusuke mentioned that after the festival, Mabel, the Ice Tribe heir, suddenly entered his room. Like a monkey caught in a melon field, Takafumi urged Yusuke to show him the video. Mabel wanted to know how Yusuke managed to slay the dragon alone, and said she wanted to leave her useless self behind. Yusuke replied that no one could call Mabel useless, and that living for oneself, not by others' wishes, is what's most important. Takafumi thought Yusuke's words might unlock Mabel's icy heart and possibly gain a new teammate. Mabel admitted she used to shut herself away, but Yusuke thought living that way was fine, like being a loyal Sega fan. Happiness is what matters regardless of what others say. Mabel then showed a broken expression. She intended to give her sword to Yusuke, who refused it. Watching Mabel's sword freeze over again, Takafumi silently brought some buckwheat noodles for Yusuke, and they reminisced about old shows and comics, marveling at how they had persisted over the years. While passing by the street, Fujimiya saw a strange man muttering to himself and decided to avoid this route in the future. However, Takafumi called out to him, revealing they were childhood friends from elementary school. Fujimiya, studying nearby, was invited by Takafumi to come over due to the cold weather. Fujimiya, a bit embarrassed, said he'd return after dropping off some things. 30 minutes later, well-groomed Fujimiya arrived at Takafumi's home, finding the door unlocked and a long black hair on the floor, which alarmed him. Just then, Yusuke arrived at the window using flight magic, attempting to erase Fujimiya's memory. Fortunately, Takafumi returned in time. Yusuke mentioned that erasing memories sooner reduces impact on personality. Upon hearing Takafumi call Fujimiya his friend, Yusuke greeted him. Fujimiya learned that Takafumi was housing an uncle who hadn't worked in 17 years and had been muttering in the street, seeming a bit off. But Takafumi explained that Yusuke had returned from another world and could use magic, which Fujimiya scoffed at, challenging Yusuke to prove it. Yusuke, realizing something, asked if Fujimiya liked Takafumi. With a red face, Fujimiya quickly denied it, and Takafumi stated they were strictly friends. Yusuke, confident in understanding adult relationships after watching EVA, a Sega-sponsored anime, asked if Yusuke remembered Asuka, the progenitor of tsunderes, wondering if he understood Elgar's thoughts. Yusuke simply said Asuka liked Kaji, showing a superficial understanding. Even Fujimiya couldn't help but criticize, "Don't bring anime emotions into reality." Then Yusuke shared his views on romance with game characters, almost moving Fujimiya. Seizing the opportunity, Yusuke read Fujimiya's memories and found out that he had specifically taken a shower and changed clothes before coming over. Fujimiya felt something was off about Yusuke and even advised Takafumi to cut ties with him. If really short on rent, Fujimiya offered to work part-time to help cover some of it. Takafumi, realizing late, thought, "Right, I could even share a flat with Fujimiya." But by then, Yusuke had already moved in, and Fujimiya's look towards Yusuke was filled with murderous intent. That afternoon, when Takafumi returned home from shopping, he found Fujimiya and the tsundere elf from Yusuke's memory standing together. The story goes back 75 minutes earlier, when Fujimiya said he'd stop by in the afternoon. Yusuke smiled, saying she was a good girl. At that moment, Takafumi received an email in English about changes to YouTube revenue. Failing to reach 1,000 subscribers meant no ads and no earnings. Yusuke needed to achieve 4,000 hours of watch time or 1,000 subscribers that day, yet he only had 812 subscribers. Takafumi complained about the sufficient watch time, but the lack of subscribers, then noticed Yusuke arguing online, which isn't easy to manage fame. Yusuke mentioned the last major crisis he faced was when the city's shield shattered and 1,000 monsters invaded. Curious, Takafumi watched a video with him. The city, called Sealed City, intrigued Takafumi about what the barrier sealed. Due to his appearance, locals nearly mistook him for an orc. Then Elgar stood up, saying that although Yusuke looked like an orc, a real orc couldn't survive inside the barrier. Elgar mentioned Yusuke's look was universally disliked in the other world. Takafumi joked about the idiom from China. "How does the other world have Chinese idioms?" Yusuke explained the video was translated. In the video, Elgar told Yusuke the barrier defended against mythical beasts. Curious, Yusuke broke the barrier. Takafumi face-palmed, realizing Yusuke also caused crises in the other world. When the barrier shattered, mythical beasts appeared, including giants. Seeing so many beasts, Elgar sighed, acknowledging Yusuke never hid his looks, then drew a sacred weapon to attack the giants but ran into the barrier and fell with a clang. After breaking the barrier, Yusuke contacted the fairy who had constructed it. He asked the fairy to repair the barrier. Despite complaints from the fairies, the giants and dragons left. The rescued people started to doubt that the recent light had damaged the barrier. They targeted Yusuke, who looked suspicious. Luckily, Elgar arrived and suggested that the barrier might have broken due to age. Elgar told Yusuke he had a narrow escape. Yusuke asked if Elgar would not reveal that he had broken the barrier. Elgar smiled and said a meal would settle the matter. Takafumi smiled, relieved. But Yusuke fled overnight. He felt threatened by Elgar and refused to have the meal, fearing further coercion. Meanwhile, Yusuke decided to ask his viewers to subscribe, thinking humility might garner support. Takafumi worried about potential online bullying, but was surprised by the positive attention. Sincerity resonates everywhere. When Fujimiya arrived, he saw a dejected Takafumi and a radiant Yusuke. He hinted at the growing age of young adults living with their parents, and even mentioned a trend of younger dependents. He suggested that if Yusuke stayed, Takafumi couldn't have a roommate if he liked someone. Yusuke realized something and offered to sleep on Takafumi's floor. Takafumi declined, saying his room was too small for 2 men. Takafumi then left to buy discounted items. After Takafumi left, Yusuke stopped Fujimiya, curious about her previous relationship with his nephew, and offered to give advice. Fujimiya immediately refused, questioning what life advice a gaming uncle could offer. Yusuke was hurt by her words, and Fujimiya felt guilty, recognizing his good intentions. She went to apologize, but upon opening the door, found a beautiful woman claiming to be Takafumi's aunt, stating she was the same gender as Fujimiya and could listen to her thoughts about Takafumi. She even transformed into Elgar to gossip. When Takafumi returned from shopping, he was confused to see Elgar and heard Fujimiya say her aunt wanted to be her love advisor. Takafumi turned to Elgar and asked about a Sega game character's name. Elgar responded correctly, and Takafumi realized it was Yusuke. He questioned why Yusuke didn't just change his appearance in the other world. Yusuke explained that changing one's body and appearance risked altering the soul, and such magic was forbidden unless absolutely necessary. Takafumi, no longer concerned, suggested they make a video since Yusuke had transformed. Although Yusuke initially resisted, he happily filmed a gaming video. Fujimiya watched in astonishment as they completed the video and quickly uploaded it online. Fujimiya looked bewildered as the woman claiming to be the aunt touched Takafumi's head, saying she wanted to see the moment Fujimiya and Takafumi first met. Fujimiya was shocked to see the image floating in midair. Takafumi called it legendary magic, but seeing Fujimiya's disbelief, he jokingly said it was a projector. The displayed image was from Takafumi's first-person view, featuring a scruffy boy with a distorted expression. Takafumi explained this was how he remembered Fujimiya from elementary school, which left Fujimiya devastated, unable to believe she looked like that, completely different from her memory. Even Yusuke couldn't help but remark how Takafumi recognized Fujimiya now. Takafumi replied that he could because Fujimiya was still Fujimiya, which made her slightly embarrassed. Yusuke saw them fist bump and realized what Elgar meant. Appearances never affect relationships. Now suspecting that the transformation magic had affected him, Yusuke played the video and found it only showed his reactions as Elgar without any game footage. Yet, it had broken 200,000 views. Takafumi celebrated beside him, joking that pretty girls are more popular than old men, causing Yusuke to revert to his original form in distress, while Fujimiya was half scared out of her wits amidst the chaos. Takafumi was adorable and well-behaved as a child, often bullied by a classroom bully, but no match for Fujimiya. The moment Fujimiya stood up for him, Takafumi admired her. Even Yusuke blushed watching the video, praising Fujimiya's cool actions while she struggled seeing her distorted younger self, admitting she might have looked quite abstract in elementary school, but had changed by middle school. Yusuke, happy seeing their photo together, took a picture. Fujimiya offered to send it, but Yusuke's phone couldn't receive pictures by email. They usually communicated through flags. Fujimiya sipped her coffee, enjoying the taste, and remembered Takafumi's upcoming birthday. Unsure what young people liked, Yusuke gave Takafumi 10,000 yen to buy what he wanted, leading him to purchase a coffee machine. Fujimiya, recalling Takafumi's birthday, silently sent him a swimsuit photo from middle school as a gift. Takafumi then asked how to delete photos from his phone, commenting that such pictures were terrible to look at now. Fujimiya felt sorry. Takafumi suddenly left the house after receiving a message about a special discount on products. Yusuke felt sad that Fujimiya's bold swimsuit photo had less appeal than discounted items. Fujimiya, distraught, accidentally spilled her coffee. In an attempt to prevent a burn, Yusuke accidentally froze her. Seeing Fujimiya all wet, Yusuke guiltily suggested she take a shower and worried she might not be comfortable. So he decided to leave for 2 hours, leaving Takafumi's clothes outside the bathroom for her. After changing into Takafumi's shirt, Fujimiya wondered if this counted as wearing her boyfriend's shirt and whether Takafumi would be moved by seeing her in it. Just then, Takafumi returned, opened the curtains, and Fujimiya, who hadn't finished putting on her pants, screamed in shock. Embarrassed, Takafumi quickly apologized and rushed out of the bathroom. Fujimiya remembered Yusuke's words about leaving for 2 hours and courageously went to Takafumi's room. Takafumi said he tried not to think about it but admitted Fujimiya was too cute. If friends saw her that way, she would surely get angry. To his surprise, Fujimiya said she was happy that Takafumi viewed her with respect as a woman. Takafumi then cried, praising Fujimiya's kindness, and promised to take responsibility. He summoned Yusuke back and told him about the accidental viewing, asking if the memory could be erased. Alarmed, Fujimiya quickly stopped them, thinking how stubborn the uncle and nephew were. Soon, it was Fujimiya's birthday, celebrated at home with Takafumi. Yusuke, realizing he hadn't prepared a gift, shared his motto with Fujimiya: "A crisis is an opportunity. Always struggle until the end." He then showed them his first drinking video from when he came of age in another world. However, Takafumi and Fujimiya thought he hadn't changed at all since then. The screen showed Elgar in new clothes, sparking gossip between Fujimiya and Takafumi. Elgar asked Yusuke if the barrier was fixed and where his strength came from. 3 years ago, Yusuke had defeated a monster that had badly hurt Elgar, despite seeming inexperienced in combat. Yusuke explained he had acted out of urgency to save Elgar. Elgar blushed at his words. Yusuke also mentioned he had slain a magic dragon and met with the heir of the Ice Clan. Although Elgar was skeptical until seeing the burning flames, Yusuke told him he believed in pushing his limits because a crisis is an opportunity. Elgar was impressed until Yusuke admitted he read that in a strategy guide, leaving Fujimiya and Takafumi speechless. Then Yusuke wanted to play a game again. Drunk, he assertively invited Elgar back to his room, thanking her for supporting him when he felt terrible. Elgar, blushing, went upstairs with him. At the door, Elgar realized she wanted to support Yusuke for life, but he simply said they had reached the room, thanked her for her help, closed the door, and went to sleep. At this moment, Takafumi and Fujimiya's speechlessness reached its peak. The video fast-forwarded to the next morning when Elgar came to find Yusuke. However, the observant Fujimiya noticed that the corners of Elgar's eyes were red, clearly from crying a lot the night before. Moved by this, Fujimiya dragged Yusuke to drink together, only to find out he gets drunk easily. Fujimiya initially wanted to run home, but Yusuke insisted on seeing her off, pulling both Takafumi and Fujimiya into the sky. However, the following day, a hungover Yusuke and Elgar went to a labyrinth where Elgar encountered a springtime potion and knocked Yusuke out. She then used an elven treasure to lock that particular memory, preventing Yusuke from accessing it. Yusuke always felt that Elgar, despite using such a treasure, was stingy about sharing her antidote secrets. Secretly, Fujimiya approached Yusuke, asking him to share the poison affecting Elgar with her because she wanted to use it on Takafumi. Fujimiya suggested that since they had magic, why not become a professional baseball player and easily earn hundreds of millions annually? However, Yusuke mentioned he disliked the baseball club members during his youth, finding them arrogant in class. Yet, he acknowledged their hard work and sweat, and couldn't bear to undermine their efforts with magic, showing a positive side of Yusuke. Suddenly, Yusuke revealed that he had been assassinated in another world. The topic seemed heavy to Takafumi and Fujimiya, but Yusuke cheerfully played a video showing the cloaked figure, Mabel, who had appeared in Yusuke's memories several times. When opened, it revealed Mabel, who froze Yusuke but did not kill him. Instead, she scolded him for killing the magic dragon without using the divine sword, which prevented her from passing it on and freeing herself from her duties. Yusuke noted that Mabel wasn't murderous and even asked if she had been eating properly. causing her weapon to crack and her to burst into tears before fainting. Yusuke dragged her back to the inn, and when Mabel woke up, he gave her some bread and asked if she had returned to her hometown. Mabel replied that the big tree she lived in had been turned into lumber, and the village chief said she had to support herself or else the village might keep her as a pet. Takafumi commented on the heartless nature of the village, noting their long-standing resentment towards the Ice Clan. Then Mabel froze all the villagers and poured ice water down their collars before leaving the village. Mabel admitted she just did not want to work, and Yusuke expressed his understanding, remarking that labor was terrible, but being an adventurer was quite good, and offered a way back. Yusuke suggested to Mabel that she could make money using the divine sword in her own way. Although the Ice Clan was only tasked with guarding the divine sword, Mabel's life was for her to decide. Mabel was very happy, and mentioned that whether the divine sword could be unsealed seemed to relate to her own heart. However, lacking confidence, her smile grew wider under Yusuke's praise, and even the ice on the divine sword seemed about to crack. Yusuke told Mabel that the ring she had could support her for life. Since he had destroyed her job, he felt responsible. Fujimiya and Takafumi were shocked, wondering if Yusuke knew what he was doing. At that moment, Mabel was overwhelmed and even thought about borrowing some money for a bath before coming back. The ice on the divine sword had completely melted, and Yusuke said that if she sold the ring, she wouldn't have to worry about money for the second half of her life. Mabel then understood what Yusuke meant by giving her the ring. She turned dark and scared Yusuke into retaliating. Elgar, who was also staying at the inn, heard the noise and rushed to the scene. She saw Yusuke pinning down a blue-haired beauty who was struggling with a ring on her finger. Realizing what was happening, Elgar immediately drew her weapon and freed Mabel from her chains. Afterwards, Mabel froze Yusuke for the entire night, and Elgar and Mabel became empathetic friends. Yusuke complained that it was too much, but Takafumi and Fujimiya dared not speak out. It was indeed Yusuke's fault. Later, Fujimiya noticed something in the video. Mabel and Elgar of the Ice Clan talked and mentioned that the ancestors of the Ice Clan also came from another world. Initially, Elgar tried to coax Mabel into taking off the ring, but found out that Mabel did not dislike Yusuke's appearance. She even said that her ancestors had blood from another world and had obtained a god-slaying weapon from the deities. However, Elgar was not listening to those stories, and instead asked Mabel how she viewed Yusuke. Mabel burst into tears, saying she could only tell stories of the Ice Clan. Elgar did not let her finish and quickly hugged Mabel to comfort her. During this time, Yusuke, who had just traveled to another world and had not gained any power, broke down. He then dropped back into memories from 18 years ago. While following these memories, he saw many tragic pasts from another world, including when Yusuke resurrected from a skeleton. The 17-year-old Yusuke looked quite handsome, though it was unclear why he had changed so much. Then, they saw 17-year-old Yusuke being attacked by locals of another world. At this moment, Fujimiya, with her sharp ears, heard a strange sound. After turning up the volume, they realized they could not understand the language of the deity, which Takafumi was shocked to find out was Chinese. At that time, Yusuke had gained the power he most desired. Takafumi thought Yusuke would go on a rampage, but back then, Yusuke only wanted the ability to communicate with others. The deity said that by climbing the sacred mountain of another world, one could gain basic language knowledge. Since Yusuke asked for it, the deity granted it. However, the natives of that world sold Yusuke as a beast man who could speak human language for only 3 copper coins. The plot was indeed very heavy. Yusuke was sold for just 3 copper coins, while a brush picked up randomly by the roadside fetched 120 copper coins. Fujimiya thought this was too cruel. Turning around, she saw Yusuke and Takafumi looking bewildered, suddenly bleeding from their noses. It turned out they had this memory before, but Yusuke had erased it with magic, and now recalling it caused them harm. The memory continued in the video. Yusuke was taken to a room used to detain magical beasts, but was completely forgotten by the shopkeeper, resulting in him being locked up for nearly a week. On the 3rd day, he survived by drinking rainwater that leaked in. If not for that, he might have died. Locked up, Yusuke began talking to the only ray of light, initially thinking he had gone mad, but it was his way to stay sane. Accidentally complimenting the light, he gained favor with the spirit of light and escaped the prison using magic taught by the spirit. This divine intervention allowed Yusuke to communicate directly with spirits, enhancing his magical powers. After escaping, Yusuke released the small magical beasts that were locked up, expecting to be followed by cute pets, but almost got attacked instead. Thinking he was doomed, he managed to stand up at the crucial moment and even saved the shopkeeper. After ensuring the shopkeeper's safety, Yusuke killed all the magical beasts and cooked their meat, finally having a hot meal after a week of starvation, gratefully acknowledging the beast's sacrifice. Takafumi and Fujimiya were shocked at Yusuke's positive mental state, wondering how he wasn't internally conflicted. At that moment, Fujimiya checked the time and said she had to go home because they were making fried chicken. Takafumi told her to go ahead, but then Yusuke mentioned there was nothing interesting left in the story. Upon questioning, they learned it was about Yusuke's heroic rescue of Elgar. Fujimiya instantly gave up on the fried chicken, preferring to watch Yusuke's bravery. The scene showed Yusuke quickly defeating a magical beast, which he said was already weakened by Elgar. If he hadn't arrived, Elgar could have defeated it given more time. Initially, Elgar mistook Yusuke for a beast man, but he offered her his jacket. However, due to his appearance, Elgar struggled to accept him and even had a brief mental breakdown before calming down and tucking her dagger away. Yusuke thought she was stabbing herself, panicked, and checked, causing Elgar to storm off in embarrassment and anger. Thus, the tsundere Elgar became entangled with Yusuke, who complained she neither returned his jacket nor stopped scolding him. At that moment, Fujimiya remembered the incident concerning Mabel's cryogenic seal. So, Yusuke rewound the memory to after the seal. Upon waking up, he saw Elgar and Mabel lying on the bed. Elgar, the tsundere, made a flimsy excuse that she was just using Yusuke for warmth. Yusuke believed her, although Elgar could have slept longer using him as a pillow. Instead, Mabel hugged Yusuke tightly, calling him mother. Elgar felt a bit sorry for her. Then Mabel screamed, saying she never wanted to work, insisting that with the sacred sword, she could live easily as her mother had said before she eloped with a younger man when Mabel was 9. Unable to bear it, Elgar woke her up. Despite this, Mabel was reluctant to sell her ring. Yusuke suggested that Elgar might as well support Mabel, who then immediately recognized him as her master. Upon hearing Yusuke was treating, Mabel happily joined him for a meal, where everyone introduced themselves at the table. Elgar mentioned her goal was to retrieve her tribe's sacred artifacts, while Yusuke used a pseudonym, stating that in a strange world, one should not reveal their real name to strangers. Takafumi and Fujimiya felt sympathy for Elgar, who had followed Yusuke for 3 years. Elgar planned to return to the small town, possibly to buy back the ring, while Yusuke decided to explore a nearby dungeon frequented by heroes. Despite heroes being rare, a recent team was hailed as such after repelling a monster invasion. Mabel expressed her desire to accompany Yusuke, noting her nocturnal nature. Eventually, the group parted ways. Fujimiya regretted missing her fried chicken dinner, but Yusuke decided to treat them to ramen, misjudging the prices from 17 years ago, resulting in Fujimiya chipping in some money. Takafumi watched a video of Yusuke communicating with the memory spirit, where he saw his uncle trying to retrieve a coat from Elgar and even attempting to tie her up. He failed to get the coat and ended up getting beaten by Elgar, who then bandaged Yusuke's wounds. Instead of returning his coat, she gave Yusuke an elven garment which he couldn't wear. Both Takafumi and Yusuke immediately thought of Fujimiya, who blushed when trying on the elven dress. Yusuke remarked that she often wore such outfits, recalling it fondly. Could this be a turning point for him? As they planned to continue watching, Fujimiya suddenly remembered she had unfinished business at the university, so she left for the college town, unknowingly leaving her phone on the table. Meanwhile, Takafumi and Yusuke played games, watching a memory of Yusuke collaborating with beings from another world to defeat monsters. Initially mistaken for a monster when he defeated a goblin, the mage, Alicia, recognized him from another village where locals had also mistaken him for a beastman. While the team's swordsman and warrior doubted Yusuke's reliability, he agreed to help Alicia defeat the goblins. Alicia didn't expect so many goblins, but Yusuke said he could handle it. He tried to use a skill from a game, but none of them worked. Instead, he became a burden. Eventually, he split a mountain with a single strike, crushing all the goblins. After this battle, the trio lowered their guard around Yusuke. thinking he could be a good teammate, but Alicia quietly asked if he was the one who repaired the barrier around the sealed city. Surprised that someone noticed, Yusuke asked if she had told anyone else. Alicia said no one believed her anyway because Yusuke looked a bit scary. She was about to say Yusuke resembled a legendary hero, but he suddenly erased the memories of the trio. Takafumi was speechless. Yusuke mentioned he met them again later and had learned to communicate with beasts by then. When they met again, the trio attacked Yusuke, who after a beating, calmed down. Alicia invited him again to join their team to defeat a spiky hedgehog beast. Yusuke thought of Sonic and questioned how they could fight such a creature. He suggested communication might avoid battle. Turning around, he saw the hedgehog beast and noted it was different from Earth's, though it reminded him of Sonic. He still tried to communicate, asking why it attacked humans. Was it because humans invaded their territory? To his surprise, he understood the beast's language. The beast said human flesh tasted bad, but stabbing humans was fun, and it enjoyed their screams and tormenting them before killing. Yusuke instantly blasted it to pieces. The trio marveled at Yusuke's strength, and he said he was in the area looking for heroes. Takafumi was about to watch a related scene. Suddenly, Fujimiya's phone rang. Yusuke thought carrying phones was trivial, but Takafumi said for modern people, no phone was like gaming without a controller. Realizing the seriousness, Yusuke immediately took Takafumi to return Fujimiya's phone. Arriving near the college town, they saw Fujimiya embraced by a redhead, even more furious looking than Yusuke. Yusuke chose not to get involved, fearing he might kill the redhead by accident. He gave Takafumi a bit of fairy blessing and let him handle it alone, providing an hour's trial. He asked Takafumi what he would do if the redhead turned out to be a good person. Takafumi said if he was good, he would leave it, but if not, he would erase his memory right there. The redhead was loudly insisting that Fujimiya join him at the hot springs, but she retorted that he hadn't let her rest last year. At that moment, Takafumi appeared before them and handed Fujimiya her phone. His gaze towards the redhead changed, and he asked if the redhead was someone he knew. The redhead seemed to recognize Takafumi as well, who turned out to be Fujimiya's younger brother, now in 4th grade but notably tall for his age and looking somewhat rugged. Fujimiya introduced Yusuke to her brother as another streamer, and the two struck up a conversation. Meanwhile, Fujimiya and Takafumi were chatting. Takafumi commented on Fujimiya's cuteness and expressed concern that she might be deceived by a bad man. Curious, Fujimiya asked what Takafumi would do if he found out she was really deceived. Takafumi was about to cast a spell, but suddenly stopped the incantation and used a short skill name to let Fujimiya experience the magic directly, mentioning that fighting was no problem and that incantations were too troublesome. Hence, he skipped them. Fujimiya teased him about using magic carelessly and warned him to be careful of retribution. Takafumi felt it wasn't a big issue. Takafumi recalled a similar incident from elementary school when older students bumped into Fujimiya. He had rushed over to scold them, although Fujimiya didn't remember this happening. Through Fujimiya's memories, Takafumi saw that the older students had tried to bully her, but she accidentally bumped into them and Takafumi intervened to stop them. Although he hadn't understood the true situation then, he had protected Fujimiya, which made her happy, especially since Takafumi had come to her aid again today. Just then, Fujimiya's close friend Sawai arrived and immediately sensed something fishy between them. She quietly told Takafumi that Fujimiya was quite popular and had many admirers. Takafumi's expression changed slightly, and he immediately asked Sawai for their contact information. Fujimiya remarked that Takafumi was the type whose new powers could turn bad. Afterwards, Fujimiya went back with Takafumi and continued watching videos of heroes, only to discover that Alicia, who Yusuke had rescued, was the legendary hero. The legendary hero kneels because of a sword, and it belongs to a teammate. Yusuke is curious when Alicia became the hero. Alicia says it was about 6 months ago. Yusuke then accesses Alicia's hero memories and discovers she was declared a hero for defeating a goblin, though none of them remember it. Takafumi realizes that it was Yusuke's previous achievements against the goblins that were credited to them. Understanding the truth, Yusuke planned to leave, but Alicia suddenly calls out to him, mentioning the restoration of the city's barrier. Yusuke intended to erase Alicia's memory, but she understands his desire not to boast about his honor and promises to keep his secret. Thus, Yusuke joins the trio, heading to the labyrinth of their dreams. Alicia's two teammates are childhood friends from the same village, determined to obtain the legendary wand. Inside the labyrinth, Yusuke quickly finds a bug in the route and leads them straight to the deepest part, obtaining the legendary wand without fighting the boss. Realizing something is wrong as their expressions go blank, Yusuke erases their memories. Takafumi and Fujimiya are shocked. Yusuke then takes them back to the labyrinth entrance and properly guides them through it, obtaining the wand legitimately. Takafumi is relieved, but after clearing it, Yusuke considers erasing their memories again, believing the true ending should be achieved through their own efforts. As he prepares to do so, Alicia calls out his name. Ultimately, Yusuke doesn't erase their memories, but leaves with 3 talismans given by Alicia. Takafumi and Fujimiya admire his cool demeanor, noting Yusuke learned this from games. Later, Takafumi serves drinks, continuing to discuss Yusuke's otherworldly memories. However, Fujimiya is aware Takafumi avoids talking about modern schools, likely due to the hardships of his parents' divorce during junior high. After bidding farewell to the trio, Yusuke heads to the capital to investigate why they suddenly became heroes, discovering that the church controls the appointment. He then confronts the army, concerned about the trio's safety given their undeserved fame. After reading the general's memories, Yusuke learns the general knew about the many goblins on the mountain, but misled the trio, claiming there were only 10. Despite surviving, the general insists they chose to go. Yusuke, having received a modern education with strong moral values, confronts these medieval notions of human rights, albeit hesitantly. Yusuke remarked on how young he was back then. The general held a position similar to a corporate executive. After realizing he couldn't win the argument, Yusuke assumed the role of a disciplinary head and slapped the general, followed by a furious scolding. Any attempt by the general to rebut was met with another slap, leaving him speechless. Debating might not always work, but throwing punches certainly does. The general's aide tried to intervene and hoped to sway Yusuke with a moving story. Yusuke declared that no one would escape and that slapping each person was only fair. However, the general insisted it was necessary since the demon dragon was killed 3 years ago, causing the monsters to move freely. He believed an evil organization was plotting in secret, necessitating military budget conservation to prepare for war. Takafumi joked that it seemed like Yusuke was responsible for those incidents. Just then, Mabel suddenly appeared. Upon seeing Yusuke as the attacker, she melted, but they quickly started fighting. Takafumi noted that despite their good relationship, they had to fight. Such is the cruelty of another world. Yusuke explained that what Takafumi and Fujimiya saw as a fierce fight was just an illusion created by his magic. In reality, the two were casually watching from a corner. It turned out Mabel had become a knight of the kingdom, enjoying good benefits, long vacations, and high pay, making the adventurer's career seem worthless in comparison. She even urged Yusuke to take a public service exam. Takafumi and Fujimiya teased that once Mabel, who usually stayed at home, got a job, she became very proud. Mabel suggested acting out a scene with Yusuke, where he would let her win slightly, and then she could claim victory and take Yusuke under her wing, ensuring her success as a knight. However, Yusuke, being very serious, refused to go easy. Mabel called Yusuke heartless for not agreeing just because she was cute. Yusuke admitted Mabel was indeed cute, which made her blush, exposing their invisibility. Their alter ego's increasingly absurd fight made it obvious they were faking. This led the general to suspect Mabel was not the true heir of the Ice Tribe, as such a noble lineage could not possibly be wandering in the wilderness. Unable to admit her job struggles, Mabel started fighting Yusuke after being mind-controlled. During their battle, a soldier was accidentally injured. Fortunately, Yusuke quickly threw a healing talisman and convinced the general through persuasive talk that while the general was willing to soil his hands for the nation, he should not collaborate with such a corrupt church. Moreover, the general still had partners who trusted him. The partners expressed their support for the general, who admitted he had deceived the 3 heroes and could no longer face them. When he looked up, he saw Yusuke had assumed the role of the disciplinary head again. He really dared not retort now. The church claimed there was no budget to protect the nation. At that moment, Yusuke left his name, stating that he could be called upon if the nation faced peril. He almost gave a fake name again. Luckily, Mabel reminded him in time. The church priest wanted to say they couldn't trust Yusuke, But then Yusuke transformed into a magic dragon and flew off under everyone's gaze. Takafumi was about to compliment how cool Yusuke looked, but Yusuke said that critical moments needed a villain for impact. Takafumi thought everything would wrap up smoothly, but then turned to find Mabel fired for being close to Yusuke and often being late or leaving early. After watching the series, Takafumi found himself itchy and with scales on his face. Yusuke said he must have been backlashed, reminding Takafumi of his use of rescue magic, saying he had shortened the chant time. Yusuke explained that this caused the backlash, since the magic involved celestial beings' help. Takafumi demanding to hurry up was rude and surely angered the celestial beings. Then Yusuke and Takafumi turned into dinosaurs? After summer began, due to the high temperatures and lack of air conditioning, Yusuke's gaming console crashed. When Fujimiya brought them ice cream, he teased the two about not using ice magic to cool down. Realizing their oversight, they used ice magic and felt their brains relax. Yusuke thought his brain hadn't switched back from being a dinosaur. Fujimiya suggested buying an air conditioner, but Yusuke and Takafumi said they didn't have enough money. So, Fujimiya suggested they make money by filming videos, perhaps even posting Yusuke's otherworldly memories online. Takafumi objected, citing too many online critics who would relentlessly nitpick, so they couldn't share those memories online. Yusuke said he would try communicating with celestial beings to see if any magic could be filmed. Fujimiya was curious about what celestial beings looked like. Yusuke explained they don't have physical forms, but are more like a combination of concepts and will, similar to a human voice. Although Yusuke could speak with them, it always seemed like a paranormal event, and some celestial beings demanded payment for their magic. For instance, the ice magic celestial being demanded a bull's head as an offering, or it would threaten to freeze the earth for 10 years. Fujimiya and Takafumi complained about the high cost. Yusuke suggested they eat the fish Fujimiya had brought, as it might be their last full meal. The next second, the celestial being called, saying a fish head would suffice. To the celestial being, fish and bulls were no different, and whether humans survived didn't matter. Takafumi and Fujimiya criticized Yusuke's calm demeanor. Yusuke said he was used to it, having played games in the 90s where the backdrop was always human extinction. After offering the fish head, Yusuke suddenly drooled over it, explaining it as a side effect from when he and Takafumi had turned into dragons. He transformed because he didn't want Takafumi to feel lonely as a dragon. Yusuke mentioned that using transformation magic too often could influence one's original form. For instance, after becoming a magic dragon in another world, he lost his memory. It took over a month to revert back to human form until Elgar, wearing a redemption ring, found him and showed them the true style of another world's battle, which was different from Yusuke's quick-kill approach. Eventually, with the help of her tribe's sacred necklace, Elgar successfully turned Yusuke back into a human. While Yusuke was unconscious, a guild president arrived with soldiers, revealing that Elgar was an old client and asking how she planned to repay the debt for the ring. It turned out Elgar had incurred a large debt to redeem the ring and was actually a princess of the elf tribe. The guild president, knowing her identity and the contract she signed with a fairy as collateral, could not oppose him. He intended to coerce a marriage with the elf royal family, but before he finished speaking, Yusuke woke up and broke the curse on Elgar's neck. Yusuke didn't understand what had happened, but felt they were even after solving her problem. However, Elgar grabbed him as he said he needed to bathe, complaining of not having bathed for over a month. When the guild president's plan failed, he ordered his mercenaries to act. But Yusuke realized Elgar was in debt and placed one of the legendary 7 rings on the president's finger, which stunned him and caused his finger to swell. Realizing the president had easily obtained a ring she had paid dearly for, Elgar erupted in anger, frightening the president and his men. Thinking Elgar might fall, Yusuke quickly tackled her, causing the swollen-fingered president to flee. Yusuke noted that Elgar didn't need jewelry as she was already beautiful without it, which made her blush, and they both fell into a mud pool, laughing. Yusuke insisted on bathing that day, and Elgar mentioned a hot spring on the volcano, teasing him for his meticulousness. Yusuke maintained that bathing daily was necessary, though he noticed Elgar couldn't manage that, resulting in a complex look in his eyes before she hit him. Later, Takafumi noticed the room had become unusually cold from the prior air conditioning magic, and they dared not open a window to avoid upsetting the fairies again. opting instead to stay warm under blankets and discuss modern technology, which they found enjoyable. Meanwhile, in Yusuke's memories of another world, he saw someone's stomach burst open from a parasite after eating fish, which prompted him to check Mabel and Elgar's stomachs, earning him slaps from both. It turned out Yusuke himself was parasitized. Seeing this, Takafumi and Fujimiya sighed, suddenly losing their appetite for fish, so the three ordered takeout instead. Sawai came to visit Fujimiya but was spotted by Fujimiya's brother, Chiaki, upon arriving. Takafumi was coming downstairs to meet Chiaki and took Sawai upstairs. Sawai suspected Fujimiya might be under duress, especially after noticing a fish head in the room and overhearing talk of fairies. She quickly tried to leave with Fujimiya, fearing a cult influence. Just then, Yusuke returned and smiled politely at them, which terrified Sawai. She later learned from Fujimiya that Yusuke is Takafumi's uncle and a video blogger. Sawai, wanting to look out for her friend, asked Fujimiya to make coffee. She found Takafumi and showed him vacation photos with Fujimiya, testing if he would focus on Fujimiya's figure. Takafumi zoomed in on the photo, asking about a man next to Fujimiya, who was just a waiter. To Sawai's shock, Takafumi mentioned Chiaki was Fujimiya's brother. She couldn't believe how Chiaki had changed from the cute boy she remembered. Then, Fujimiya walked over, pushing Chiaki towards Takafumi, who showed no reaction. She pushed Sawai next and noticed Takafumi's normal reaction, confirming his orientation. When Fujimiya saw her own photo in Takafumi's hand, she leaned against him, causing him to react strongly. Upon learning Sawai wanted to see Fujimiya's childhood, Yusuke pulled up a video from Takafumi's memory. Fujimiya and Takafumi tried to stop him, arguing that erasing memories at will could damage the mind. Yusuke admitted he'd been scolded for doing so before, likely during a trip to a hot spring with Elgar. Fujimiya, curious, asked if there were any benefits in those memories, but Yusuke said the memory fairies valued privacy. Despite this, Yusuke showed them the video, starting with him making strange noises in a hot spring. Takafumi urged him to fast forward, but ended up reversing to their arrival at the spring. The sign was in neon language, indicating the owner was an otherworldly person from Japan 20 years ago. Yusuke wondered if that person was still around, but Elgar informed him the individual had only stayed briefly and had passed away. Yusuke noted the name Hell's Spring, suggesting a hellish experience for that otherworldly person. The scene shows the manager of the hot spring stepping out. He explains that the concept of the hot spring was proposed by the previous manager, but it was rebuilt by them later. This is because when people from other worlds die, all their belongings disappear. While the manager was explaining this to Elgar, Yusuke realized he couldn't skip the scene. So, he casually opened the storage and started organizing the equipment. When they entered the shop, the manager's wife and daughter were very frightened. Fujimiya noticed that Yusuke never uses polite language in the other world, even though he is very courteous in the modern world. Yusuke angrily stated that he would use polite language in the other world if they treated him as a person first. He also mentioned that the prices in the other world were not expensive. After enjoying the hot spring, Yusuke was very relaxed. Elgar seemed in a good mood and even changed into a yukata. Elgar said that they would share a room today because other places were occupied. He proudly claimed he didn't want to sleep with Yusuke. At that moment, the girl leading the way suddenly spoke up, saying she knew Elgar wasn't there voluntarily. She mentioned that besides them, there was only another group of guests, and they could prepare another room for Elgar. But Elgar's intimidating look silenced her. Eventually, the two ended up sharing a room, not expecting there to be an additional space inside. Yusuke went straight into the partition and told Elgar to rest well. Elgar was somewhat gloomy, not expecting Yusuke to come back out and say that Elgar was too stressed. Yusuke insisted on giving Elgar a massage to relax him, expressing his gratitude during the massage, saying that he might not have woken up if it weren't for Elgar's help. Elgar yelled in pain from the massage, kicking Yusuke and crawling forward. Yusuke grabbed Elgar, muttering that there is no pain when it's free-flowing, insisting on making it flow smoothly. Then, the situation escalated into a very bad one. During this, Yusuke accidentally toppled over Elgar. Takafumi decisively paused the video, asking Yusuke if it was really okay to continue. Meanwhile, Fujimiya was already performing a ritual, telling the spirits that only adults were present, and they could watch the scene below. They should not be dismissed lightly after one night. As Yusuke and a shy Elgar fell silent, Yusuke suddenly stretched out a chain and pulled open the door, only for Alicia and her two companions to fall in. It turns out the hotel's other group of guests were the three heroes. Alicia apologized to Yusuke. Elgar noticed that Alicia's pronunciation of Yusuke's name was completely different. Suddenly, Elgar asked Alicia, "What do you think our relationship is like?" Alicia whispered in Elgar's ear, making him very happy. Takafumi and Fujimiya, watching the video, thought this kid was very gullible. Elgar couldn't believe the three were actually heroes. By this time, the warrior had given Yusuke the reward for defeating the labyrinth, which he pocketed without a glance. The knight said Yusuke shouldn't trust strangers so easily. But Yusuke responded that his trust was in them, not others. Both felt Yusuke's statement was very cool. Elgar then showed Alicia his ring, omitting key details, and asked if she had ever received a ring. Alicia quickly denied it. Elgar then turned to Alicia's teammates, asking which of them she liked more. Both quickly shook their heads, stating they had the right to choose as well. Fujimiya felt sorry for the childhood friends. From the night, Elgar learned that Yusuke had helped the trio through the labyrinth and had obtained the legendary salvation staff, which Alicia had repainted. Though no ring was obtained, the staff was as precious as one. Yusuke found out they were practicing moves and saw the moves through Alicia's memory. Elgar discovered one of the scabbards was an ancient magical artifact and flew out that night to find it. As soon as Elgar left, the inn caught fire. A giant gorilla with a human face entered, hypnotizing the innkeeper's daughter and letting monsters in, including one that sealed magic. Thus, Yusuke couldn't use magic. Takafumi found the situation dire. Yusuke acknowledged his physical magic was weak without support spells, considering himself useless. Then, the warrior and knight stepped forward, saying they trained hard because they admired that person's strength. Takafumi and Fujimiya believed they meant Yusuke, who felt embarrassed when suddenly the two mentioned another name, creating an awkward moment. Yusuke, feeling dejected, went to the bathroom alone. Just after he entered, the knight and warrior praised him. They initially wanted Yusuke to come out and see, but he no longer believed them. Fujimiya was worried about Yusuke not coming out, but Takafumi trusted Yusuke's resilience and decided to continue watching the video with Fujimiya. In the video, Yusuke was fighting a beast using talismans, but they were not very effective. Fortunately, Elgar intervened at a crucial moment, sniping from a distance. Seeing Elgar with a high ponytail and glasses, Fujimiya thought he looked incredibly cool. Fujimiya was curious about the magic-sealing beast. Yusuke explained that the beast exhaled a breath that immobilized fairies. However, the fairies simply found the breath unpleasant and chose not to move. As a result, Yusuke couldn't summon them at that time. Takafumi and Fujimiya couldn't help but joke about how easily the fairies went on strike. Meanwhile, Yusuke stepped outside and found Alicia's teammates hypnotized. Alicia healed Yusuke's injuries. Curious, Yusuke twisted the magic wand to see if it could break the hypnosis. To his surprise, it worked, enveloping him and Alicia in light and causing him to accidentally fall on Alicia. Takafumi and Fujimiya gave Yusuke a look, suspecting he was flirting again. At the same time, Alicia successfully rescued her hypnotized teammates. The hypnotic beast attacked her, but Alicia transformed into a monk, using warrior skills to punch the beast away. It turned out that once activated, the wand could harness her teammates' powers and receive divine blessings, enhancing her moves. Alicia became a true hero. Seeing the situation turn against it, the hypnotic beast fled and summoned a flame beast. A swarm of these could be very dangerous, but the fairies had recovered. Thus, Yusuke used water magic to instantly defeat the flame beasts and extinguish the fire. The innkeeper thanked Alicia and her team profusely. Yusuke casually restored the inn's barrier. The innkeeper's daughter apologized to Yusuke for her earlier fear. The inn benefited from the incident, gaining a hot spring. Overall, it ended happily for everyone. Fujimiya was slow to connect this with getting scolded for erasing memories. Yusuke then showed more footage. After the hot spring emerged, Yusuke went to soak in it, and unexpectedly, Alicia came in a swimsuit, which nearly malfunctioned. Fortunately, Yusuke erased the memory in time. However, seeing the scene again, he remembered and nosebleed from the backlash. After Alicia adjusted her clothes, she realized Yusuke was younger than her. Alicia mentioned she had no memories before age 9 and hoped Yusuke would help her recover them. Thus, Yusuke used a memory fairy to access Alicia's memories. Alicia's earliest memory is being transported as a slave by a goblin caravan. She was then rescued by a village of swordsmen and warriors. Due to a brain injury, she can't recall anything before this event. She was found with only a slip of paper bearing her name. It seems she had a sister, but her family is no longer around. A priest from the border named her, and she has survived up to the present. Thus, Alicia's memories are not very clear. Yusuke learned about this and realized how important her memories were to her. He then admitted to erasing her memories twice, which made Alicia very nervous. After Yusuke confessed, Alicia regained those 2 memories and realized that Yusuke was the true hero. However, Yusuke was not interested and stated that his goal was to find a shortcut back to modern society by disabling the city's barrier, which didn't work, so he restored it. Learning that Yusuke's erased memories were not related to her early life, Alicia urged Yusuke to stop using magic recklessly. She expressed her desire not to forget Yusuke and hoped he would not forget her. Yusuke then promised not to use memory magic on Alicia and not to erase his own memories of her. Later, Yusuke realized he might have erased a memory. To keep his promise, he had Alicia repeat what had just happened, which embarrassed her. Just as she was about to make Yusuke close his eyes and follow suit, several sniper shots were fired from a distance. It seems Elgar had discovered their location, forcing Yusuke to leave while Alicia had already fallen for him. Fujimiya suspected that Yusuke might have erased too many memories, which affected his thinking. It turns out Yusuke used magic to kill his emotions, reasoning that without a heart, he wouldn't feel sad. Initially, Yusuke was researching CDs when he suddenly recalled encountering a singing monster in another world. He then showed a video to Takafumi and the others. At first, Yusuke saw a huge monster singing a song from another world. He charged at it with a weapon, only to find Mabel under the monster. It turned out the giant monster was made of ice by Mabel, who was also the singer. Mabel claimed she had left the Knights on her own accord and said that after creating the fake monster, no one dared to approach the area, allowing her to stay secluded. However, Yusuke said he was tasked with subduing the singing monster and would have to act if Mabel didn't leave. Mabel immediately agreed to leave, which disappointed Yusuke as he lost another chance to fight. Yusuke advised Mabel to sell her old ring so she could have money to live on. However, Mabel wanted to keep it. Yusuke then suggested that Mabel become a minstrel since he enjoyed her singing. Mabel admitted she wasn't good at singing in front of others. Yusuke understood, but felt it was a shame, as she was beautiful and had a lovely voice, which could have been a hit in Japan's entertainment industry. Mabel only heard about living her life and returning home, which made her feel embarrassed. At this point, Yusuke was already thinking about how to return home. Noticing Yusuke's loneliness, Mabel decided to sing a song from his homeland. Yusuke taught her the song without hesitation. Then, Takafumi and Fujimiya heard a familiar tune, the background music of an old Sega game often played in arcade claw machines. Unable to comment, Takafumi and Fujimiya watched as Yusuke, moved to tears, lay on Mabel's lap. Mabel expressed a wish to visit Yusuke's homeland with him. While Yusuke was asleep, a general's men prepared to capture him, but Elgar, who had been tracking Yusuke, intervened. Takafumi and Fujimiya found it difficult to watch, questioning what a mess this was. Unaware of the issue, Yusuke then checked game guides and realized he had misremembered the name of a game character he liked, which broke him. Afterwards, Yusuke was dispirited while recording videos. Takafumi and Fujimiya thought misremembering a name was no big deal, but Yusuke stressed its importance. This was because the day after Mabel sang, Elgar had revealed her true name to Yusuke. Intrigued, Fujimiya and Takafumi explored Yusuke's memory and found Elgar in a darkened state, upset because Yusuke remembered Alicia and Mabel's names but not his own, only calling her Elf. Yusuke explained he never knew the elf's true name. Elgar was interested when Yusuke finally revealed his own name and asked him to write it down. Hearing Yusuke say her real name left Elgar flustered. She revealed her name was too long and belonged to her tribe, so Yusuke decided to call her Emerald, reflecting the color of her eyes and the beauty of the gemstone. Elgar, embarrassed, asked Yusuke not to use her name in public, and said she wouldn't use his in public either. She then happily embraced Yusuke, delighting Takafumi and Fujimiya. At that moment, Mabel approached, and Elgar, happy with the exchange of names and receiving the ring, decided to be nicer to Mabel. Meanwhile, Yusuke walked to a temple that was part of the song Mabel sang the previous night, which was helpful to newcomers from other worlds. Yusuke then blew up the temple. Thinking of defeating the creature in the temple might allow a return to the real world, it was discovered that what exploded was not solid. Moreover, the surrounding monsters were all revived. There were 3 temples in total. According to the video provided by the fairy, it seemed all were destroyed by Yusuke. As monster numbers grew, Elgar and Mabel attacked together but couldn't kill them. After Yusuke hit a non-physical monster, he suddenly became mind-controlled and attacked Elgar and Mabel. At a critical moment, Elgar tackled Mabel. And fortunately, Mabel's divine sword blocked the flame attack, allowing them to escape. At that time, the trio of heroes arrived. The warrior punched Yusuke, mistaking him for an orc. Realizing Elgar and Mabel were there, Alicia recognized the person who was sent flying was Yusuke. She quickly healed him with magic, inadvertently seeing memories of Yusuke's childhood, showing he was sealed in a dark, small room. Everyone felt pity for Yusuke. Just then, Yusuke suddenly rose, broke free from control, and forcefully gave a body to the non-physical monster, the previously sealed magic dragon, which merged with the monster's power. Alicia told Yusuke that the magic dragon would merge with this invisible force, possessing godlike healing abilities, powerful attacks, damage immunity, and mind control skills. Alicia asked Yusuke how he planned to defeat it. Yusuke was stunned, realizing the situation had worsened. Yusuke mentioned they had an Ice Clan divine sword specifically to counter the magic dragon, but Mabel was trembling. The warrior and swordsman said they couldn't rely on Mabel. It had to be Elgar. She said her weapon could accumulate power, needing just a bit of time and magical input from Yusuke to kill the enhanced dragon faster and stronger than before. Her head gem would make her immune to control. While discussing their strategy, Alicia quietly spoke with Yusuke about restoring his memories. Elgar interrupted their conversation, then forcefully introduced Mabel to Alicia. The magic dragon attacked, prompting them to counterattack. Suddenly, Elgar, blushing and acting coy, told Yusuke she needed to conserve energy so he should carry her. Instead, Yusuke tied Elgar up with chains. Mabel was terrified and tried to flee, but the magic dragon, which particularly hated Ice Clan members, wouldn't let her. Yusuke decided to use Mabel as bait. Luckily, Alicia blocked the attacks aimed at Mabel. However, Yusuke realized that Elgar's claim of having a way to defeat the magic dragon was false. She was just worried her teammates would lose confidence, fearing they might end up like her past self. Remembering Yusuke's words that a crisis is an opportunity, they decided to face the enhanced dragon together. Takafumi moved, took off his glasses. "My goodness, finally a proper otherworld battle," he said, deciding to visit the restroom before watching. Everyone prepared snacks and coffee. Yusuke continued playing the video. The two leapt up. Yusuke first blocked the magic dragon's initial attack, then helped launch Elgar high into the air. While Elgar was gathering strength, Mabel finally took action, freezing the magic dragon with her divine sword. Elgar seized the opportunity to break the dragon's first shield and delivered a full-force strike, successfully defeating the magic dragon. As everyone stood stunned, Yusuke quickly noticed Elgar falling weakly and rushed over to catch her. Unexpectedly, Elgar burst into laughter, teasing Yusuke for showing his anxious side. While laughing, Elgar suddenly teared up and called out Yusuke's name. Yusuke embraced Elgar, fulfilling her wish for a princess carry. Then Yusuke noticed a burnt smell on Elgar, who tried to prevent him from smelling it, and they both fell to the ground. Elgar found that Yusuke was still collecting the dragon's power. Mabel approached to offer praise, and Yusuke complimented everyone, admitting that without them, defeating this monster would have taken at least 4 months and possibly caused collateral damage. Everyone felt embarrassed by the praise. Mabel, pushing her luck, also got a lift for Alicia from Yusuke, who then flew her up. The other 2 teammates didn't miss out either, giving Mabel another ring and revealing their true names, which completely surprised Elgar. Later, Elgar discovered Yusuke was collecting the dragon's power to cultivate a stronger monster, planning to capture it and use a space-time rift to return to Earth. Elgar didn't want Yusuke to go back but was too proud to say it outright, so she planned to directly cut the seal. In Yusuke's view, there was nothing interesting left in this other world. Fujimiya was curious about what happened next. Takafumi insisted that asking only about the ending without experiencing the process was shameful. Then Yusuke offered to treat everyone to ramen, and the three enjoyed a meal together, marking a happy year. Takafumi returned home joyfully, only to find that the memory fairy panel hadn't disappeared and was then shockingly imprisoned and lost all his assets. "Where is the second season?" he exclaimed.